They didn't invite the cameras because they wanted attention. They did it because they wanted the staring to stop, because living as a curiosity was never the point. From the outside, Abby and Brittany Hensel were presented as smiling, remarkable, almost untouchable, the conjoined twins who seemed to defy every medical prediction placed in front of them. But behind that familiar image was a much quieter truth, one shaped by boundaries, exhaustion, and a lifelong negotiation between who they are and how the world insists on seeing them. This story isn't about what made them famous. It's about what that fame cost, what changed as they grew older, and why the reality of their lives has always been far more complex than the cameras ever showed. They finished college, became teachers, and inspired millions who believed they had already beaten the impossible. But in 2025, something shifted, and it didn't happen loudly. It happened through whispers, resurfaced interviews, and small details that suddenly felt heavier than before. Fans began asking the same uneasy question over and over again. What really happened to Abby and Brittany? The answer isn't dramatic in the way rumors suggest, but it is far more unsettling. Once you understand it, their story no longer feels like a miracle frozen in time, but a life still unfolding under pressure most people will never face. Imagine living every second of your life physically connected to another person, not symbolically, not emotionally, but literally sharing one body. That has been the reality for Abby and Brittany Hensel since their birth in 1990. For years, the public saw bright smiles, uplifting interviews, and a narrative built on triumph. What rarely made it into that picture was the cost of sustaining that image, or the complexity of growing older in a body that was never designed to age easily. In 2025, their father finally acknowledged what had long been kept private. The challenges they face behind closed doors are deeper and more fragile than most people ever realized. Living with two brains controlling one body requires constant coordination, not just physically, but emotionally. Every step, every movement, every ordinary action depends on perfect cooperation. While they overcame obstacles that would overwhelm most people, what they are facing now is different. It is ongoing, progressive, and far more uncertain. He didn't disclose every detail, but he made one thing unmistakably clear. New medical concerns are threatening their shared future. For the first time, doctors have raised the possibility of separation, an option that was once considered unthinkable, not because it wasn't imaginable, but because it was too dangerous to survive. The weight of that conversation is almost impossible to grasp. They have never known life apart. Separation isn't just a medical risk, it is an emotional rupture, one that would redefine everything they have ever known. Health challenges have followed them since infancy. Over the years, they underwent multiple surgeries to address issues with their spine and chest. Procedures necessary just to breathe comfortably and move without pain. Even then, stability was never guaranteed. Now in their early 30s, those complications have intensified, forcing conversations their family hoped would never come. Aging has introduced new pressures, and the margin for error has grown thinner. Their lives have always unfolded under constant public attention. Cameras, documentaries, and strangers' curiosity followed them everywhere. While fame brought admiration, it also came with a quiet toll. Their father admitted that behind the scenes there has always been a struggle to feel ordinary, to move through the world without being stared at, whispered about, or reduced to a spectacle. That emotional strain doesn't fade with time. It accumulates. Though they share one body, they are not the same person. Abby is more structured and serious. Brittany is lighter, more spontaneous. Those differences, while natural, can turn even simple decisions into moments of tension. Choosing what to eat, where to go, how to respond, all require negotiation. As their future becomes more uncertain, those differences matter more than ever, not because they divide them, but because they highlight how much trust their bond requires. The decision not to separate them was made long before any of this unfolded. When they were born, doctors presented their parents with an option that no family should ever have to face. Attempting separation carried enormous risks, including the possibility that neither child would survive. Their parents understood that choosing separation meant choosing between them, a choice they refused to make. Years later, their father reflected on that moment by asking a question that still lingers today. How do you choose between two lives when they are inseparably one? That decision shaped everything that followed. It defined their childhood, their independence, their visibility, and now, their future. What the world sees as a shocking turn in 2025 is not a sudden collapse, but the next chapter in a life lived under extraordinary circumstances. And the truth is not that something went wrong, it's that their story was never finished, only paused at moments when the world wasn't ready to look deeper. Separating them would have meant choosing a future for each daughter without any certainty that both would survive. Their parents understood that even the smallest risk of losing one twin was something they could never accept. After long, agonizing discussions and careful medical counsel, they made the decision to forego separation entirely. It was not hesitation, it was conviction, a choice rooted in love, caution, and a profound respect for the lives of both daughters. That decision meant Abby and Brittany would grow up conjoined, a reality that would define every part of their extraordinary lives. Knowing what lay ahead, Their parents focused on creating a home built around cooperation, patience, and dignity. They raised them not as a medical condition, but as to individuals who would need to learn how to share space, responsibility, and identity in ways no one else ever would. Because Abby and Brittany never knew any other way of living, they adapted from the very beginning. They learned to synchronize movement, communicate without words, and negotiate every action together. Walking, eating, turning, even reaching for an object required alignment. Over time, that coordination became instinctive, forming the foundation of a bond that is both practical and deeply emotional. That single decision made shortly after birth ultimately allowed them to live full, rich lives on their own terms. It gave them the chance to grow, to learn, to dream, and to show the world what resilience truly looks like when it isn't performative, but lived every single day. To understand what they are facing now, it's important to go back to the moment the world first met them. Abby and Brittany Hensel were born in Carver County, Minnesota, two parents who lived grounded, hard-working lives. Their mother worked as a registered nurse, their father as a carpenter and landscaper. Alongside the twins, the family included a younger brother and sister, and together they were raised in the small town of New Germany, Minnesota. From the outside, their upbringing appeared as ordinary as possible. Family routines, school days, and small-town life shaped their childhood just like anyone else's. They attended local schools and later graduated from a Lutheran high school in Minnesota, where they were known not just for their condition, but as students trying to fit in, learn, and be accepted. They went on to attend university in St. Paul, graduating in 2012, a milestone many once believed would be out of reach. But long before college, the world already knew their faces. Their first major national exposure came in 1996 when they appeared on daytime television, introducing millions to their daily reality. That same year, a major magazine placed them on its cover with the words, "One Body, Two Souls," offering readers an intimate look at their routines, challenges, and joys. Public interest was immediate and overwhelming. Follow-up stories continued as they grew, documenting how they navigated childhood, school, and medical realities few could comprehend. As the years passed, cameras continued to return. Documentaries explored their medical condition, their personal growth, and the delicate balance required to live one life as two distinct individuals. Major networks revisited their story repeatedly, each time offering updates as they reached new stages of life. By their early teens, their journey had already been chronicled across television and print around the world. What the audience saw, however, was always carefully framed: courage, inspiration, smiles. What remained largely unseen was the private effort required to maintain that strength, and the long-term consequences of growing older in a body that was never meant to be simple. And that is where their story begins to change. As they entered their teenage years, Abby and Brittany shifted their focus toward the same milestones every other teenager faces. School, friendships, social pressures, and even learning to drive became part of their daily reality. Their story reached a new level of public visibility in 2012 when they starred in a reality series that followed them through their final days of college and into their first professional steps as part-time teachers. By the time the series aired internationally the following year, they were no longer seen only as a medical phenomenon, but as young women whose entire lives had unfolded in front of a global audience. Against nearly every medical expectation, Abby and Brittany Hensel did more than survive into adulthood. They built lives defined by determination and intention. Long-term survival for twins with their condition is considered extraordinarily rare. Yet year after year they continued to move forward. They graduated from high school in 2008, then enrolled in university with a clear goal of becoming educators. Although they initially hoped to pursue different academic concentrations to reflect their individual interests, the workload made that impossible, forcing them to compromise in ways few students ever face. Even so, they persisted, earning their degrees in 2012 and once again defying what many believed was unattainable. Throughout their lives, they have worked deliberately to preserve their individuality. Clothing is custom altered to include separate necklines, a small but meaningful reminder that they are two distinct people sharing one body. Their anatomy is a complex balance of shared and individual systems, requiring constant coordination and communication. Everyday tasks depend on an almost instinctive understanding. When they type emails or make decisions together, they often anticipate each other's thoughts without speaking. When they agree, they refer to themselves as I. When they don't, they use their individual names. It's a subtle distinction, but one that reflects the depth of their connection and the boundaries they've carefully maintained. At what they have never embraced is unwanted attention. They've spoken openly about their discomfort with being stared at or photographed while simply trying to live ordinary lives. In interviews as teenagers, they shared hopes that sounded strikingly familiar. They wanted to date, to marry, and to have families of their own someday. By allowing cameras into their lives, they hoped the world would come to understand them better, not as spectacles, but as people deserving of normalcy. In 2013, they reached another defining milestone when they began working as teachers, standing in front of classrooms, guiding students, and shaping young minds. They demonstrated once again that their lives were not about limitation, but purpose. Over the years, they have been more open than most assume, sharing aspects of their personal lives, careers, and relationships on their own terms. That openness extended into adulthood, including Abby's marriage in 2021, a moment that quietly reinforced what their story has always been about: not survival alone, but the right to build a full life, shaped by choice, dignity, and resilience. More recently, they made a deliberate choice to educate the world on their own terms by explaining how their bodies actually function. In a video shared on their social platform in late 2024, a molecular biologist carefully broke down their anatomy in clear human language, stripping away myth and replacing it with understanding. Abby and Brittany's bodies are a rare combination of shared and independent systems. They have 2 heads, 2 brains, 2 spinal cords, and 2 hearts, all connected through a shared circulatory system. While their blood flow is shared, their brains operate independently, allowing each twin full control over her own side of the body. Abby controls the right arm and leg. Brittany controls the left. What looks effortless on the outside is the result of a lifetime of precision, trust, and silent communication. That cooperation shows up in the most ordinary moments. Typing, holding objects, cooking, or simply moving through a room requires constant coordination they no longer have to think about. Viewers saw this clearly during their reality series, when they accomplished things many believed were impossible, including driving a car. In one episode, Abby explained that they each earned their own driver's license by taking and passing the test separately. When they drive, Abby controls the gas and brakes while both twins steer together. A perfect example of how deeply synchronized their lives are. It isn't instinct, it's practice, built over decades. The explanation also revealed the complexity inside their shared body. They have 4 lungs, 2 partially fused, 2 stomachs, 2 gallbladders, and 3 kidneys. They share 1 liver, 1 small intestine, 1 large intestine, 1 pelvis, 1 bladder, and 1 reproductive system. Because they each have their own stomach, they digest food separately and experience pain independently. Abby has explained that if Brittany's stomach hurts, she feels nothing at all, and Brittany only feels pain on her own side. These details underscore a reality the world often overlooks. They are not one person living as 2. They are 2 people sharing 1 physical space between their teaching careers, personal milestones, and years of public visibility. Abby and Brittany continue to challenge the idea that limitation defines a life. Their story isn't about spectacle. It's about adaptation, resilience, and cooperation at a level most people will never need to imagine. And yet, even with all that openness, there was one part of their lives they managed to keep completely private. For years, many assumed nothing about Abby's life could remain hidden. After all, she and her sister grew up under constant cameras, interviews, and documentaries. But one of the most significant milestones unfolded quietly, without headlines or announcements. Abby had been married since 2021, and the world didn't find out for 3 years. In November of that year, she married Josh Bowling, choosing privacy over publicity and stepping away from the spotlight rather than inviting it in. That choice wasn't accidental. After their television series ended, Abby and Brittany intentionally pulled back from public life. They focused on work, family, and building a sense of normalcy far from constant scrutiny. While the world assumed every major moment would be shared, they were carefully reclaiming control over what stayed theirs. Public interest surged again in early 2024 when news outlets confirmed the marriage through public records, revealing that Abby and Josh had been legally married for years. The revelation stunned fans who believed they already knew everything. Josh Bowling lives with Abby and Brittany in Minnesota, the state where they were born and raised. Their home life reflects a decision they made long ago to prioritize stability over spectacle, privacy over performance. What looks shocking from the outside is, for them, simply another step toward a life lived on their own terms. After enlisting in the U.S. Army, Josh developed his own career as a certified nurse, while Abby and Brittany kept their jobs as teachers. His experience in the medical field offered a level of comprehension to a connection that was unmatched. As deathless conjoined twins, Abby and Brittany share a torso and other organs below the waist despite having 2 heads. Naturally, this led to inquiries about Abby's marriage. However, the twins demonstrated by their behavior that they don't live their private lives for the sake of public acceptance. Rather, they opted for boundaries, control, and privacy. It wasn't concealment that made Abby's wedding so quiet. It was deliberate. This chapter was theirs alone, after decades of being public personalities, and that decision, in many respects, speaks more about Brittany and Abby's strengths than any interview ever could. However, what do we actually know about Josh, Abby's husband? To find out, keep watching. Josh Bowling is who? The man who controls Abby's personal affairs. Josh Bowling's life narrative is characterized by loss, service, and a strong desire to help others. Bowling, a Tennessee native, became a distinguished veteran of the United States Army, working as a combat medic or healthcare expert. He served with the 1st Cavalry Division in Iraq and Afghanistan during his military service, where he was first-hand witnesses to the brutality of combat. He was permanently changed by such encounters. Bolling candidly discussed the emotional burden of his duty in a 2021 interview with the Minnesota Star-Tribune. He clarified that he frequently confronted with death in its most agonizing form. He said, "I dealt with a lot of death and dying, the bad version of it." His post-military career would be influenced by that exposure. Bolling pursued a job in healthcare to make the transition from military service to civilian life. In Minnesota, he earned his registered nursing degree and is currently employed in hospice care, offering fellow veterans and Dove Life assistance. Bolling said that hospice care was unlike anything he had ever encountered when he first came across hospice work music during his nursing education. He characterized it as something more profound than a job. It seemed to be a vocation. He clarified that he was drawn to the opportunity to assist someone in dying quietly as opposed to in agony or mayhem. Hospice care was a symbol of decency, compassion, and closure in contrast to what he had witnessed during combat. Bolling saw it as a means of turning years of trauma into something worthwhile. While Bolling was mostly ignored, Abby and Brittany's sharing of a TikTok video from Abby and Josh's wedding in June 2024 brought it back into the public eye. In the video, Bolling's hands were resting on Abby and Brittany's waists while they swayed softly back and forth, their arms wrapped around his neck. The dance floor was illuminated by soft lights, which produced a cozy, private, and intensely personal atmosphere. With thousands of comments and over 400,000 views, the video rapidly gained popularity. Longtime support for the twins was shown by many viewers. One commentator wrote, "I'm happy for her. Since they were infants, I have observed them." The occasion felt poignant and full circle to those who had followed Abby and Brittany for decades. The twins uploaded sweet wedding photographs on TikTok in May, which was followed by that June post. The pictures included Bolling and his daughter with Abby wearing a bridal gown. #Forever was a succinct and impactful caption. It was an uncommon look into a life they had purposefully kept hidden. Bolling was married to Anaka Bolling in 2010 prior to marrying Abby. After 9 years of marriage, they were divorced in 2019. During that period, the family quietly navigated major changes away from the public eye. The couple welcomed a daughter in 2016, and after the divorce, a second child was born in 2020. Years later, court filings revealed additional legal developments that briefly reignited public curiosity. In late 2023, a paternity suit was filed involving two men regarding the younger child, with legal documents referring to her as a half-sibling. Requests for DNA testing followed, and while reports were submitted in 2024, no details or outcomes were ever released publicly. Through it all, the response from Abby and Brittany Hensel and those closest to them remained unchanged. Silence wasn't avoidance, it was intention. They shared only what they chose, when they chose, and in a world that has watched them since infancy, that quiet control may be the strongest boundary they've ever set. When criticism inevitably followed the resurfacing of their personal lives, their response was neither defensive nor apologetic. It was direct. After their private marriage became public knowledge, the sisters addressed the noise with calm confidence, making it clear that public opinion would never dictate how they live. In a short video shared online in early 2024, they appeared alongside Abby's husband, paired with a caption that left little room for interpretation. If people disapproved yet continued to watch, that attention changed nothing. The message wasn't confrontational, it was final. They weren't asking for permission. That mindset didn't appear overnight. It was forged through decades of exposure. Their lives have been examined, debated, and dissected since the moment the world first met them in the mid-1990s. From early interviews to documentaries and reality television, audiences were given access to moments most families would guard fiercely. And yet, even with that visibility, the sisters have always drawn a line between what is shared and what remains theirs. They've repeatedly emphasized that, despite sharing one body, they are two separate people with distinct personalities, preferences, and perspectives. Daily life requires constant negotiation, but not in a way they view as limiting. It's simply the rhythm of their existence. Decisions are discussed, compromises are made, turns are taken. What outsiders often see as a burden is, to them, a lifelong practice of cooperation and trust. Physically, their lives remain a remarkable balance of independence and unity. Each sister maintains control over her own side, with separate organs working in tandem alongside those they share. That structure allows them to move through the world together while still experiencing life individually. It's a balance they've never wished to undo. When asked about separation, their answer has never wavered. They do not want it, not because they fear the unknown, but because they value the life they already have. To them, their shared existence isn't something to escape. It's something that has allowed them to experience the world in a way no one else can. Friendship, work, love, disagreement, growth, all of it, together. Despite the scrutiny, despite the assumptions, they see their lives not as a limitation, but as proof that meaning doesn't come from fitting expectations. It comes from choosing how you live. Even when the whole world is watching, it is a life filled with motion, shared experience, and deep connection, one they have embraced without apology or regret. Today, Abby and Brittany Hensel continue living in Minnesota, building lives that look far more ordinary than most people ever expect. They work as fifth-grade teachers, a profession they stepped into shortly after graduating from college. When they were hired, the school district issued 2 contracts. Yet because they share one body, they split a single salary. Another quiet reminder that the world's systems were never designed with lives like theirs in mind. Inside the classroom, what many assumed would be a challenge became a strength. Their differences allowed them to divide responsibilities naturally. Abby gravitated toward math and science, while Brittany focused on reading and language arts. Together they formed a seamless teaching partnership, offering students something rare, not because of how they look, but because of how they work together. Outside of school, their lives remain intentionally low-key. They are occasionally seen doing ordinary things, shopping, walking, spending time with family, and they maintain a modest online presence where they share light, playful moments without opening the door too wide. That quiet routine shifted again when Abby's marriage became public knowledge in 2024, pulling the twins back into headlines they had deliberately avoided. Just as that attention began to settle, another moment reignited global curiosity. In August 2025, photos surfaced of Abby and Brittany carrying a newborn baby. The images spread rapidly, triggering waves of speculation and emotional reactions. Questions poured in. Was the baby theirs? Had they become parents? Instead of explaining, the twins responded the way they always have, on their own terms. They shared the photos themselves in a short video, paired with music and a single word in the caption, "Blessed." No clarification, no denial, no explanation, just enough to acknowledge the moment without surrendering it. Once again, they controlled the narrative not by answering every question, but by deciding how much of their lives the world was allowed to see. In doing so, they reminded everyone that while their story invites curiosity, the most meaningful parts still belong to them alone. Their lives have never been about shocking twists or dramatic reveals. They have been about choice, cooperation, and the quiet power of living authentically under constant scrutiny. And even now, after decades in the public eye, Abby and Brittany continue to move forward the same way they always have, together, deliberately, and without asking for permission.